Hello again. Welcome to another module of Authentic Africa with Lion Dog African Safaris. My name is Andrea Radke. I'm the owner and operator of Lion Dog African Safaris, and we specialize in private guided tours to Africa. Every single tour is customized to meet your conditions and to meet your situation, be it timeline, be it budget, be it interest or activity level. So everything we do it in cooperation with you. We'll ask you a lot of questions. We will want to hear what your experience has been so far regarding travel, and we will incorporate your favorite experiences to make your Africa trip a trip of a lifetime. In the previous modules, we talked about some logistical points regarding game safaris. We also talked about gorilla tracking and chimp tracking in the countries of Uganda and Rwanda. And today we will talk about some main activities, because not everybody is going to Africa just for game safari, even though that's the main reason why people, especially from here in North America, go to Africa to experience the wildlife there. But there are other things to do and to experience. And some people go to Africa to have an activity that they would like to do. And one of those activities, for instance, is climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So we'll talk about that today. We'll also talk a little bit more about other activities, but let me start sharing my screen with you and show you the information I have prepared for you. So we'll go through this little setup here again. And here we go. All right, so as I mentioned before, we customize all our tours. So I will listen to your input, and I will ask you a few questions about how long you want to be in Africa for, and so on. So some of the activities, or many of the activities we talk about today, are a set timeline. So there's not really a lot of wiggle room we can incorporate. So keep that in mind when you're planning your trip to Africa. If you do want a game safari and an activity, so make sure that you will have enough time to incorporate both of it. Even though we have been doing, for instance, for clients, climbing Kilimanjaro and then just a day safari afterwards. Because in my opinion, honestly, if you go to Africa, even if your main reason is to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, it's always a nice idea to at least get a glimpse of the game, of the wildlife that is there for you to see. So today's module, Activities in Africa, will include climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, the Ngorongoro Highland Track, which is a backcountry hiking trail in Tanzania also, the Serengeti Marathon, which is in the Serengeti, and the Serengeti is also in Tanzania, then the Tokki Trail in Namibia, that takes us down to Southern Africa, and then we come back to Tanzania for some cultural experiences. So as you can see, a lot of these things are happening in Tanzania, which is a really good country to go to do those things, because they are prepared for that, and they have a lot of opportunity to be active and to do other things than just your game safari. We also do some hiking and climbing in Rwanda and Uganda, but those things are kind of on like upcoming right now. If you are interested in doing that, let me know, because there is a few volcanoes, for instance, that one can hike up to or up to the rim. And there's also the Rwenzori mountain in Uganda, or the mountain area in Uganda, where one can also do some hiking and climbing, actually. And there's a glacier that can be climbed, like a little bit of ice climbing up there in Uganda also. Those things are new and coming. I do have the information about it, and we can offer it, but I want to talk about that with you in detail if that's one of your interests. So let's start climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is one of the 7 summits. So the 7 summits is climbing the highest mountain on each of our continents. And Kilimanjaro is the highest freestanding mountain in Africa that can be climbed. It is the only mountain, really, of the 7 summits that can be climbed without any special equipment. So all you really need is your hiking equipment, some good hiking shoes, or hiking boots, and a backpack, and then your little things that you would need on a daily basis on the mountain. We'll talk a little bit about that, but not in great detail. The mountain itself is quite high. It's 5,895 meters high, which is 19,341 feet, which is actually considered very high mountain, especially on the incline, like and considering how many days you use to go up the mountain. So it is considered a fairly challenging mountain to hike onto. Also, the height of the mountain puts you in high altitude and regarding or considering your insurance. So make sure if you go and climb Kilimanjaro that you have an insurance that covers high altitude situations. If you work with me, I will be happy to put you in touch with an insurance provider that we often work with that does offer high altitude insurance, and also all the other technical, normal insurance, cancellation, interruption, medical insurance. If you're in need of insurance for your tour to Africa, let me know, and I can put you in contact with an office that I quite frequently work with. If you book your Mount Kilimanjaro climb with Lion Dog African Safaris, you will also receive a PDF document that helps you preparing for climbing the mountain, because there's a few things that you have to be or should be aware of. For instance, the use of a medication to help you with altitude sickness. There's some information about that medication in the guidebook. It is recommended to use it, but there are a few tips and tricks that we learned along the way that are explained in the guidebook. There's information about rental equipment. So while you can bring your own stuff, there's also a great list of equipment that can actually be rented locally, so you don't have to bring it on the plane, or you don't have to carry a lot of stuff around if you're doing a safari afterwards, for instance. If you do want to bring your own equipment and you do want to do a safari after, we do have the possibility, or we have the facilities to store your equipment if you want to go on a safari afterwards, and then you can pick it up coming back to the airport in Arusha or outside of Arusha, and you can gather your equipment afterwards, and we keep it safe for you during your time on safari. So there are different routes on Mount Kilimanjaro that can be climbed. Some are better than others. Some have been there for a long time, and all of these routes can be done in a variation of days. So it's not one route you can climb. You have to climb it in a certain number of days. There are a few variations, and I don't want to talk about every single route today, but I have picked the three recommended routes up the mountain, which I want to explain to you, and why I picked those, or why we picked those three routes as being the better routes to climb. So the first route I want to talk to you about is the Lemosha route. It has not been the most popular route, but it is becoming the most popular route. So it's taking over from the Marango route, which used to be the most popular route. So Lemosha is a climb that can be, or a trek that can be climbed between 6 and 8 days. The 8-day climbing time is the one that gains the highest success rate. So an average of 85% of the people climbing Kilimanjaro on the Lemosha route are successfully summiting it. As you can see, I hope you can see that on the top here in the little picture. It starts in the west, and you're starting really at the bottom of it. So you start at low elevation, and then you're making your way up. And this route, also because it is fairly long, gives you the possibility to climb high and sleep low, which will help adjusting to altitude. So when you climb the first day, for instance, here's your first camp, Shira 1. So you would climb, and you would climb past the camp, go to higher altitude, and then come back and sleep at your first camp the first night. And you do that pretty much every night. So you climb higher, and then you come back down. The disadvantage is it takes a long time, and because it takes 8 days, so 8 days has the highest success rate. because of the 8 days on the mountain, it becomes expensive. For every single day on the mountain, you have to pay your park fees, and 8 days of park fees can be a hard pill to swallow. So it is a fairly expensive route to climb. If you want to be successful and you want to spend that time on the mountain to make sure you climb high and sleep low, Lemosha route is a really good route to do that. It has nice scenic stretches. It has nice landscapes. It has some areas where you are required to climb. There's one day that is fairly exhausting and fairly steep to climb. But it is the success rate is still high because of the long time that you're spending on the mountain. For some people, it is not ideal to spend that long time on the mountain, because we only have limited time available, for instance, to go on a trip and so on. So we would want to maybe save some time. There is another route, the Machame route, that has a comparable success rate, and it can be climbed in a range of 6 or 7 days. What's the difference? So again, it's usually the altitude and the adjusting to the altitude that's the difference. So if you climb it in 6 days, you may have a harder time adjusting to the altitude the higher you get. If you are in an area that is already at a higher altitude, like for instance here in Canada, in Alberta, we are in the Calgary area, we are at a fairly high altitude already. So we have less difficulty doing, provided you're fit enough, but doing the 6-day climb up Kilimanjaro. If you come from a fairly flat area, fairly low to sea level, like for instance Vancouver or Seattle or that kind of area, and you are lower down, then you should absolutely calculate 7 days to climb Kilimanjaro, because it will be harder for you to adjust to altitude. So the Machame route is the most popular route at this time. So a lot of people really like that route. It has fantastic landscape and scenery. It is of medium length, 6 to 7 days, and the success rate is very comparable with the Lemosha route at 85% on 7 days and at 73% on 6 days. And remember, the Lemosha route was 8 days and 85% success rate. So the Machame route would be a very good alternative if you don't want to spend that much time on the mountain. It starts kind of in the southwestern area and goes up the mountain. Also, it provides you with climb high and sleep low opportunity on your way up, so you can adjust to altitude much better than if you go straight up. So it gives you enough time to acclimatize. Again, 7 days is still somewhat long, and you will have to consider that when you calculate your time on the mountain. You do have to pay park fees, absolutely, for each and every day you will be on the mountain. Another route, and this is the route actually that we promote to take, especially when you're coming from a higher elevation area already, it's the Rongai route. The Rongai route is not very crowded. So where you have like 40, 50 people on the trail with you pretty much a lot of the times on Lemosha and Machame, the Rongai route is not very crowded. It starts on the north side of the mountain. It's the only track that starts on the north side of the mountain, and that's somewhat the reason why it's not very crowded, because you don't have as much plant life, so not as much shrubs and trees, which makes it not that landscape, not that attractive, but you do get beautiful views up to the north over the Kenyan plains. And another advantage coming from the north is that you have the sunshine in your back, actually. So when you climb the mountain, it's easier on your eyes. You don't have to squint all the time. It's a little bit less exhausting when you don't have to kind of hide your face from the sunshine all the time. So that's something to consider as well. We started at low precipitation. There is low precipitation along the Rongai route, also because it starts on the north side of the mountain. So if people have, for instance, time available in shoulder season, say in March or April, or you want to climb in November or so, where there might be some rain and precipitation in Tanzania already due to the rainy season starting or just ending, the Rongai route would be a better pick because it receives less rain on that side. It is a shorter trek, so again, you can make it in 6 days. The success rate is about 65 to 80% on that route because there is some more difficult stretches on that side as well. However, there is also a situation where the success rate is very much dependent on the team you have. If you have a very good guide and you have very good porters, this success rate can actually be increased. And believe it or not, if you climb with us, with our team in Tanzania, we have a 95% success rate. Also because we prep our climbers very well. We explain what's to be expected. And one thing that I really want to stress is you have to listen to your guide. They have been doing these treks for many, many years. They've been going up and down this mountain many, many times. So they know what it looks like when you become altitude sick. So when the altitude gets to you, they can see that. They can see the change in your behavior. They can see the change in your stamina. They know what it looks like when the altitude compromises your safety on the mountain, or it dictates to go slower or go down a bit or something like that. So always listen to your guides. They know the mountain so well, and they have seen many, many people going up and down this mountain. So very, very important. There is another route, and unfortunately, the sign here on my screen is covering most of my writing. But there is another route. It's called the Marango route, which is the oldest and most established route going up Kilimanjaro. It has been there for many, many years. And what happened is that there have been built huts along the route up the mountain. So this is the only route where you don't sleep in tents. All the other routes, you will take tents along. The porters will carry the tents. They'll carry sleeping bags, pillows, your equipment to go up on the mountain. For the Marango route, you do not need camping equipment because there are huts along the way that can be used up onto the mountain. Now, it is an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage because if you book with an operator that I want to say is a bit flaky maybe, or has not your best interest in mind, you may come to a situation where they will push the Marango route on you because it's less expensive for them. They don't have to provide any equipment, any camping equipment. It is climbed typically in 5 to 6 days, but the success rate is fairly low because operators want to turn around quickly. So have, a group go up and come down in 5 or 6 days, which is a very quick turnaround, makes more money. And you don't have to provide, or they don't have to provide any camping equipment, which is also less expensive for them. So, you have to kind of be really careful. Even though this route is well established, it does not have the highest success rate. If I remember correctly, the success rate only lays like in 6 days at 50 to 60%. And that is because some operators just, they don't care if you make it up the mountain. They push you up the mountain for, in 5 days. And if you don't make it, well, you've paid them. You turn around and you back down in 3 or 4 days instead of making the summit up the mountain. So be careful about, going too fast up the mountain. Be careful by choosing your operator. If you don't want to book with us, I get it. Some people, have their favorite operators or something, or have friends that climb with somebody else. But do your research and make sure that you are booking with a good operator. Now the question is, climbing privately or in a group? If you climb Mount Kilimanjaro with Lion Dog African Safaris, it means that you climb the mountain on a private guided base. So it will be you and your companion. So if it's a couple, if it's a single person, if your group is 4, then we will provide the the appropriate amount of porters for you on your group, and you will not join another bigger group. It will be the 4, 2, 1, 6 of you with your head guide and your porters. Every climber on the mountain has about 4 to 6 porters that carry your equipment, food, and things up onto the mountain. So every climber has at least 4 porters going up the mountain. On top of that comes your campy and cook that prepare you 3 meals a day on the mountain, and your head guide. Your head guide often also has another assistant or even 2 assistant guides. So he can pay, or every climber gets enough attention from the guide, and every climber can be monitored, and the guides have, know how you are doing. They know your strength. They know after a day or so how fast you can go or how slow you want to go, etc. And they can then adjust, what needs to be done to get you successfully on the summit of the mountain. So the only thing you have to carry every day would be your day pack, which would have your sunglasses in it, some sunscreen, and some layers of clothing, because you will travel through different climate areas or climate zones, so to speak. So you'll start in a rainforest at the bottom, and then it will gradually become colder until you're almost in on a snowy zone on top of the mountain. There's not that much snow left on top of that mountain, but there will still be snow and ice up there. So you will layer your clothing, and then you need your day pack to take some layers off and carry it for the remainder of the day. You will also have to bring at least 2 water bottles, and that will be explained in your guidebook. The first couple of days, fresh bottled water is supplied. After that, your porters will prepare drinking water for you. So it will be collected on streams on the mountain, and then it will be purified and made ready for you for drinking throughout the day. Your porter will do that for you. You don't have to do that, but you have to bring your own water bottles. The campies and cooks set up the camp for you, your tents, your sleeping bags, and they will also cook you 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And on the last day, actually, there will be another group of porters that will bring up some food, because they cannot bring all the food all the way. So you will be met by another group of porters, probably on the second last day of your climb, that will supply some fresh food for you, so you can have fresh food on the mountain. So typically when you go on climbing on Kilimanjaro, or the majority of people are asking for it to be timed, so to have the summit on Kilimanjaro on a night of a full moon. What does that do? It provides some extra light, because the last summit is started at midnight. So you will climb in the middle of the night when it's usually dark, and often people want to time it. It's often described in the literature on the internet that it's a nice feature to summit Kilimanjaro at the full moon. Now, I have heard different opinions about that. First of all, because so many people want to do it, that full moon night is very crowded on the summit. So you will have a lot of people trying to summit Mount Kilimanjaro on a full moon. Second thing is that on your last day, so on your last ascent up the mountain, you are most likely going to be quite exhausted already, and you will, I don't want to say you will struggle, but it will be exhausting to get up that last little bit to the top of the mountain. And the view you will get up there is beautiful. Is it going to be really that much more if you go on a full moon? Also, the fact that you will only stay up on the highest peak of the mountain for about 10-15 minutes, because the altitude is so high that the oxygen levels are quite low up there, so you don't really want to stay up there for a long time. Really, the only time, like, all you do is up there, you go up there, take a picture, shake your hand, look around, and then you will make it back down. By that time, sun is already rising. So it may be a really nice feature to go up there on a full moon. You should have a headlight. A headlight will provide you with the necessary light to go up there when it's dark. Will the full moon really provide you that much more light? will it really make your last ascent up the mountain that much more enjoyable? I don't know the answer to that. I do know that a lot of people want to do it, so be prepared that it may be quite crowded on your last ascent, summiting Mount Kilimanjaro. So that's just a side information for that. So some people say, you know what, I don't know if I want to climb Kilimanjaro in a private group, just with my spouse or just with my kid, or the four of us or so. Why should I not join a bigger group? It's probably going to be less expensive. Yes, it may get less expensive, but remember, every single person has to pay the park fee, so it's not going to be that much less expensive. Every single person is going to get their number of porters with you. So even if you climb in a group with a group provider, if you are 10, 15 people in a group, everybody will have 4 porters. This is what it's needed, because they are limited to the amount they can carry, and it's regulated how much they can carry and should carry. So every climber will have 4 people coming with them. Now, in a group of 10, say 12 people, if you have 4 porters for everybody, that's going to make the group 40 people more. So it will be at least 60 people climbing up the mountain when you have a group of 10. Now, that's a lot of people going up the mountain. And it doesn't make it that much cheaper going up the mountain in a group of 10 or 12 people. The third question is, if you have one head guide, which is typically done, one head guide and then some assistant guides, is everybody really going to get enough attention to, any type of exhaustion or altitude sickness? Will that be really recognized and seen by the guides that are taking you up? The porters are very, very helpful, and they are used in many, many different ways, but they are not guides. They may be training to become guides, and every guide, even safari guide in Tanzania, has to have climbed Kilimanjaro at least once. So they may be training to become guides, but they're not trained yet. So they may not be able to recognize if there's a problem or so. So, there are some pros and some cons, and even if you go with your private group, you will most likely run into other people climbing up the mountain. So it's not that you are on your own, isolated, and nobody else around you. It just means that you have more staff available to look after you and make your climb more comfortable and more assisted than you would climb in a group of 10 or 12 people. And you would be in a smaller, you would have a smaller group of people around you. So those are things that you would want to consider when you make that decision, if you want to do it private guided or if you want to go in a group. So this is what it looks like. Tents on the mountain. If nature calls, usually it's an outdoor loo with a view, so you will use the bushes, etc., to go to the bathrooms. If you want to, we can provide an eco toilet tent that can be carried up the mountain. It is at an extra cost, and of course it will require more porters. So just keep that in mind as well when you're planning your climb up the mountain. In the guidebook, it will be explained what the tipping policy is for climbing Kilimanjaro. There is an association that has put out some guidelines for porters. For instance, it is regulated how much every porter can carry or should carry. It is also outlined how the tipping should be done with the porters. Many people on the internet or in the literature say that that one should only use operators that are affiliated with CAPA. It's the Association of the Kilimanjaro Porters. Now, not every good operator is associated with them. That doesn't mean that they don't follow those guidelines or that they do provide their porters with equipment and treat them well on the mountain. We only work with the people that do that, even though they are not associated with CAPA. Kappa is a not-for-profit, I think it's called, association. They have their head office actually in Colorado, USA, and they are kind of like a branch of that climbing association that's situated in Boulder, Colorado. There's a lot of political issues and a lot of, maybe situations where not everybody agrees on things, but keeping every porter safe, keeping every porter healthy, treating them fairly and compensate them fairly, that is something that we have very much incorporated and that we are looking after very, very much. So if you climb Kilimanjaro with Lion Dog African Safaris, we use a supplier in Tanzania that follows all those guidelines and that treats the porter well and that chooses the guides that are established, that have been climbing Kilimanjaro many times, that know the mountain well, and that treat the porters as part of the team. So it is important. It's important for myself, for me as well, that we look after the porters well, and we do look after those porters well. We are quite renowned for doing that, for our safari guides as well as our Kilimanjaro guides and porters. So please be reassured that we do follow those guidelines and provide all the necessary things to make the porter's life easier and help them support their families, etc. All right, so that would be Mount Kilimanjaro. That can be done in between 6 and 8 days, I would say. You should prepare for climbing the mountain, so some exercising and even hiking in high altitude or higher altitude would be recommended. There is another trail or trek that can be done in Tanzania that does not require that. It's called the Ngorongoro Highland Trek. And what is that? It is a 3-night, possibly, 4-night camping backcountry hiking trail that leads you through Maasai land, just outside the Ngorongoro Conservation Area. You would be trekking along the Great Rift Valley Wall. You can see here the direction it takes. So you would start just north from the Ngorongoro crater, and you would your safari vehicle will drop you off there. It's a supply vehicle will bring all the stuff that you need, and then you will be met by your Maasai guide, an authentic Maasai man that I've met him personally in Arusha just earlier this year, that will lead your trek through this area that is Maasai land. So he knows the area very, very well. You'll fetch some donkeys because in this case you don't have porters. You have some donkeys that will carry your equipment. So some pack mules or donkeys that will bring along some tents. This is also a bivouac camping experience. Some food, some supplies, water, etc. will be taken along on your hike, and you will hike along the Great Rift Valley Wall until you kind of go off it a bit towards the north and towards Lake Natron, which will be your destination. And it's a 3 nights camping along the trail. So the first night on the Great Rift Valley Wall, the second night just north of it, and then the third night you will be camping at Lake Natron. And often people have yet another day at Lake Natron in a tented camp because there are a few things to see. So there's, for instance, the lake, which is an alkaline lake and attracts very, very many flamingos. They come there and they breed there and they stay there. So if you're going in the right months, you will be able to see quite a few flamingos on the lake. It's an alkaline lake. There's also a waterfall right close to it, which is said to have therapeutic characteristics. So some people go in there and they say it helps with arthritis, makes you younger, rejuvenates, and it has therapeutic characteristics. Or you can just go there and have a nice shower in a natural waterfall, a natural shower, and spend some time, in the water there, because it can get quite warm in that area. So after you've done your 3 nights or 3 days on the trail, having a shower in a waterfall is actually quite nice. What's also very close there is some very, very old 10th 10,000 years old footprints that have just recently, in the last 15 years, been discovered. They say those footprints are more than 10,000 years old, but they had been covered by some layers of soil that had blown in from the land, and then just lately, those footprints have been, discovered because the soil was blown off again by the wind, and suddenly they appeared. And scientists came there to put their best guess on how old these footprints are, and they decided that those are more than 10,000 years old. So you can actually go there and you can put your foot into a 10,000-year-old footprint, which is quite neat. So this would be a trail where you would not see very many people along there. So you may come across another couple, so another group of people that may also be doing this trail, but it is something that takes you away from the crowds, that takes you off the beaten path into nature with a Maasai guide that will tell you more about the Maasai culture. You may come across some Maasai because there are some bomas around there, and you will just have your time with nature and be away from the hustle and bustle and the busy towns, or even Serengeti can become quite busy sometimes, and just have your time out there in nature, away from everything with your Maasai guide, and enjoy nature on a 3-day hiking trail. It takes a little bit of stamina. Some days you will hike between 4 and 7 hours. So you should be able to hike about 7 hours for one day along the trail. So that would be your longest day of hiking. The other days are 4 to 5, 5.5 hours of hiking. One day will require you to hike about 7 hours, but that depends on how fit you are, how fast you can go, and the weakest member, of course, sets the pace for your group. So private guided, just the 2, 4, 3 of you, how many ever you are, with your private guide, doing this trail along the Great Rift Valley Wall all the way up to Lake Natron. Private guided, like I said, and we can easily incorporate that at the beginning of your safari or at the end of your safari. You're very close to the Ngorongoro crater, and we can even put it in between. So whenever you would want to do this trail, we can incorporate it in your tour. You don't get a certificate for this one. You don't get a pat on the back. You do get a pat on the back, I want to say that, from your guide, and at the end of it. And I'm pretty sure that you will really enjoy that out in nature, doing this backcountry hiking. Another activity that we just decided to also offer would be the Serengeti Marathon. Now, I started including this into my presentations when I planned coming, to a town near you. And at that time, the Serengeti Marathon was still a go. Right now, I do not know yet if the Serengeti Marathon will be held this year or not. It's typically in November. This year it would be on November 14th that the marathon takes place in the Serengeti. So you would be inside the Serengeti, start and end the running of the marathon, or whichever category you would want to run inside the Serengeti. It would be on the western side of the Serengeti. At the time when this marathon takes place in November, the Great Migration will be somewhat on the other side. So they will be in the northeast side, in the Lobo area, during November and early December. So you will not see the migration during your run through the Serengeti, but you will most likely come across some other wildlife, some other antelopes, maybe a giraffe or something like that along the trail when you're running. There are rangers and guides that come along on the marathon to keep you safe. So they will be there. They will probably just run for a stretch and then and then another person will take over. They will not run the entire marathon with you. They will have like different stretches with different stations where the rangers will be with the runners and keep them safe from the animals. 4 categories: a full marathon, a half marathon, an executive run of 10 kilometers, and a fun run of 5 kilometers. So if you want to take part in any of those, drop me a note. Typically 2 nights would be dedicated to getting you to the area, sleep there, then start in the morning, stay in the area for another night, and then you would move on to do your safari. This year, the marathon was supposed to be like a promotion for sustainable tourism, and that was the motto for this year. Again, I'm not sure if it's going to happen this year, but it will happen next year, provided that we will be, back to normal by next year. And then if you do wanna integrate the marathon into your safari, it would actually be a good time to do it. November is shoulder season, so a safari in November will be slightly less expensive than September, October, or even December. Around the 15th December, we will enter the festive season, so prices will be a little bit higher again. November and early December are typically low or shoulder season pricing for safari in Tanzania. Good time still to go. Expect a little bit of rain because we're kind of getting close to the small rain season, which typically starts mid-November. Of course, nature dictating. Sometimes we get early rains, sometimes we get late rains, so we'll never know. But it shouldn't be a big nuisance to get a little bit of rain here and there. Often it's more of a relief than a nuisance, getting a little shower in the afternoon. Okay, so this is the Serengeti Marathon. Let me know if you're interested, and we can customize your safari around the marathon if that's something you would want to do. Now I want to take you to Southern Africa, to Namibia. And in Namibia, Namibia is one of the most arid countries in all of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, I want to say. And we have an area that is just outside the Namib Desert. It's called the Namib Rand Nature Reserve. And that is a spectacular, beautiful landscape to see. And we can do the Tokki trail there. So this is a trail of 3 days easy hiking. So you don't really need to do any preparation for this. All you have to bring is your hiking shoes or boots, light hiking boots or hiking shoes. There's no significant elevation when you do this trail. It is out in the open. This is Namibia is the country to do outside under the blanket of stars, outside sleeping. There are even quite a few lodges now and camps that offer that, where you can have either roll your bed outside of your cottage and sleep on the porch outside, or it's set up like that and you sleep outside under a blanket of stars. This is what you would do on the Tokki trail. It's a 2-night situation, so you'd be sleeping 2 nights outside. It's small group sizes. They do put groups together. So this, unfortunately, I cannot do private guided. These are set up, and the organizers or the suppliers will put groups together to up to 8 people. So no more than 8 people, a minimum of 2 people on the trail, maximum of 8. And you get your guide and your supply staff with them as well. Your luggage will be driven to the points where you are sleeping. So you'll have your duffel bag or things you need at the station where you will be sleeping. So you only have to carry a small backpack with your day supplies like sunglasses, sunscreen, camera, and things like that. You will bring. Also here you will have to bring a water bottle, and the water will be filled up for you by the guides from wells. So they pump the water from underground, and that's drinkable, and your water bottles will be filled up that way. You will be served some scrumptious meals. 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and everything will be served outside. That's the beauty of this climate in Namibia, is that it's warm and it's dry, and you can really do that kind of stuff outside. I actually was fortunate enough to do a camping trip like that, not in the same area. I was further north in the Kunene, and we were sleeping outside under the stars, and there was a full moon, and I tell you, it was spectacular. The moon was so bright that we were able to see colors. Usually the brightness of the moon is never really enough to show colors, but there it was. It was the biggest moon I've ever seen, and there was no clouds. There was no air, no light pollution, because like there are not many people in Namibia. There's only 2.9 million people in Namibia, but it's a very, very large area, like very big country. So the density of people and towns and cities and villages is very low. So we have minimal light pollution. And watching the night sky has become one of the main activities and one of the main highlights for people to go to Namibia. Some people go just for that to Namibia, to see the night sky there. And on the trail, the Tokki trail, like I said, 2 nights outside, you will be in nature. You will be out there. You will not be intense. Like this is a setup for sleeping. You will sleep under the stars. You will wake up to the fresh smell of coffee. Somebody will have made some coffee, and it will be wafting over to you, and you'll be waking up slowly with the sounds of nature around you. So something quite unique and quite beautiful. It is a little bit out of the way. Driving time to get to the trailhead is about 6 hours from Windhoek. Windhoek is up here. So if we were to start in Windhoek, it would take about 6 hours to get you there. So it means we would have to sleep somewhere along the way to get you to the trailhead the next morning. The same distance about from Swakopmund down here through the desert, also about a 6 hour drive from Swakopmund. So it takes a little bit of planning, but I will do that, of course, for you, to have you sleep, the night before somewhere close in a guest house close by, so that you can start the trail. Meeting point is in the morning, and then you start hiking. The first day is an easy hike of no more than 2 hours in the afternoon. Then you sleep at night. The second day is a longer day of hiking, 6 to 7 hours, depending on the strength of your group. And then the last day will be breakfast in the morning, and then leisurely taking off for another 3 to 4 hours of hiking in the morning, and you would be done around lunchtime. You will come across some wildlife, mostly small wildlife. The guide will point out, chameleons, little spiders, insects, creepy crawlies along the way, and explain the fauna and flora of the Namib Nature Reserve. It's really quite spectacular and beautiful to see. Good chances for seeing some oryx. That's the picture down here. Sometimes you'll see some kudu as well, and you may even come across some nocturnal animals, and maybe even some cats at night, because they are in the area. When we did our outside camping trail or camping trip up further north, in the morning, one of the members of the group, we were 8 people. It was a family of 8. One of the people kind of walked the perimeters of the camp, and they actually saw some rhino tracks. Like a rhino had been close to where we were sleeping for that night. So that was quite exciting to see. There won't be rhino in that area, but there may be other animals. There could be some elephants. There could be antelopes, etc. in the area. Okay, so that's the Tokki Trail in Namibia. So now the last topic, I want to come back to Tanzania, and I want to talk a little bit about cultural experiences, because when you go to Africa, and I know game safari and the wildlife is most likely top of your priorities, which I absolutely get and I agree. The more times I go back to Africa, the more I become connected to the people there. And if you meet the people in Africa, you will understand why. And if you have a little bit of an interest to learn more about them, I really do. I really recommend connecting with them and seeing what they do and how they live. And I picked 3 different ways of doing that, because not everybody is into what all or what each of these samples will represent. There are a lot of Maasai in Tanzania, all the way around the Ngorongoro crater, in that area, all the way up to Kilimanjaro, and then even, of course, crossing the border into Kenya. This is the area where they live. That's where they've always been. That's their area. That's where they grow up. That's the start of humankind almost. And it is worthwhile visiting the Maasai. Now, in recent years, I want to say the last 5 to 8 years of absolutely, it has changed. The Maasai visitations have changed. And I don't want to judge them. I actually want to applaud the Maasai that they found a way to do business. And they found that tourism can be lucrative. So what they do is they set up Maasai bomas of villages along the most traveled safari routes. And you will see that coming from the Serengeti into the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, you will see along the road quite a few villages or bomas with Maasai around them. Be aware that those villages are set up. So those are not authentic, everyday living Maasai. They set up these villages to show you their fabrics, their jewelry, their dancing and singing. So they will do all of that. They will dance and they will sing for you when you get there. You will pay a fee for that, and then you will go inside and you will likely see a hut that they built the way they've always built their buildings, etc. But this is not a village where they actually live. So this is set up for you to see. I would like to take you to an area west of Mount Kilimanjaro to show you an authentic village, and a village where the Maasai still live the way they live. The young guys go out and herd the livestock outside of the village. They go every day. They go out with their cattle, with their goats to find grazing areas, and then in the evening they bring them back. So the ladies are still doing the work they've always been doing, and they will also make jewelry. They will make meals. They will do a lot of the housework, etc. And you can see that in the village. And it's not that they just do that because you're coming. It is they invite you to a day of Maasai life. So you will be able to witness what they do every day. And that is a little bit off the beaten path. It's on the west side of Mount Kilimanjaro, so about 2.5, 3 hours drive from Arusha, about an hour and a half away from the airport. And you can spend 1 or 2 nights at a lodge there that it was built by the Maasai, according to how they live. Like, it's set up a little bit like a village. It's outside of their village. So the lodge is outside of the village, but the people that live in the village come to the lodge to work there. So they will bring some of the jewelries the ladies make during the day and sell it for you at the lodge. So they will not bother you when you're going on your visit in the village, which is often the case in the setup Maasai villages. There's a lot of the people that just want to sell their jewelry, their baskets, their necklaces, earrings, whatever they have for sale. And it can be quite awkward and it can be quite annoying. I've heard that from many people that stopped at one of these villages, and we did visit a village close to the crater. For a while, we stopped doing that because it's not a high quality visit. The visit west of Kilimanjaro will be authentic. So you're not going to get bothered. If you want to buy something, great. Buy it at the lodge. There's a little curio shop there. It is guaranteed made by the people in the village. And you can browse through there without somebody tapping on your shoulder and wanting you to buy it. You can have a village walk. You can have a nature walk with a Maasai where they explain the fauna around and the flora around. Some of these villages or that particular area is actually a migrating area for elephants and zebras. So if you're there at the right time, you will see wildlife kind of migrating through there towards Lake Manyara, and then going back and forth in that area at certain times of the year. You can take part in a Maasai barbecue where they slaughter a goat. You won't be seeing that, but they will barbecue the meat on the fire in the late afternoon, and they will tell stories and sing and dance. They will have a little spear competition that you can take part in, where they will show a traditional dance for when they had to defend their livestock and themselves from lions, and how they would do that. And there's actually in this one particular Maasai lodge, there's actually a young lad that when he was younger, even he actually with some of his friends, he had to fight a lion because that lion was eating their livestock, and he told us the story, and it was very, very interesting, and kind of gives you a little bit of goosebumps hearing those stories, and those are true stories. So really, really cool to hear, really cool to spend some time there. Usually we spend about 2 nights there, so you can take advantage of all the activities they have to offer. Another highlight, and really something that a lot of the guests that do it, or I want to say 99% of the people that visit the Hadzabe and Datoga come back and they tell me how much they enjoyed this visitation. Very, very authentic, very awesome people. The Hadzabe are a tribe that still lives the same way they've been living for many, many thousand years. They're hunters and gatherers. Every day they go out to hunt some of their meat provisions for the day, and you can go hunting with them. So you can go and meet them. That's them, the second picture down here. They live in an area, it's called Lake Eyasi area. It's south of the Serengeti, probably about a 2-hour drive from the crater to Lake Eyasi, and also about 2.5 hour drive from Tarangire Park to get to Lake Eyasi area. So we can do this spending 1 or 2 nights in the area and integrate your Hadzabe visit with them during that time. So you want to go visit with them in the morning because that's when they go hunting. You can go hunting with them. They hunt with spears and arrows, and they will show you how to do that. And you can go along with them. You have to be a little bit fit. You have to be able to run for some stretches because they will pursue some of the prey, really, that they're hunting for the day. They typically go after some small antelopes, maybe baboons, maybe a bush pig, maybe a porcupine. If nothing is in the area, they will show you how to hunt squirrel, and they will also prepare the meat for consumption, and they will most likely offer you to share the meal with them, and you can do that, or you can also decline. Like nobody will fault you or blame you or judge you if you don't want to eat that meat. The Datoga live in the same area, just a little bit southeast of that, and they are pastoralists. So they have, they also still live the same way they've lived for many, many years, but they have livestock they tend to. And with them, you can see the village, you can learn more about how they tend to their livestock. And they are very, very gifted metal workers. So they make jewelry, they make pots and pans, they make arrow tips, that the Hadzabe buy from them, for instance, to go hunting with. And you can see all of that. You can see how they make that. You can see, how they trade it and why, and their culture and their history. Again, this is also a very authentic visit, not like a bargaining, Mexican market or something like that. Very, very gentle, friendly people that offer you some of their stuff to buy if you want to, and they will not take it personally if you don't want to buy anything from them. With the Hadzabe, we supply a translator because they speak one of the Click languages, which even our guides don't understand. So there's only a few people that can speak the language. So you'll get a translator with you that will help you communicate with the Hadzabe. They will ask you probably some questions, how you live here in North America. I mentioned it in one of the previous modules. I always have my phone ready with a couple pictures of a snowy landscape or a snowman or something like that, something they may have not ever seen before. And it's always well received when you show them something from here, something that's maybe typical in your area, and they can see what's happening on the other side of the world. They're quite curious and they're quite interested in seeing something like that. So those two tribes, Hadzabe and Datoga, are very, very traditional, so very small tribes, not very many left of them, and it's quite special to see them. You can also spend a day in a modern tradition or in the modern village in Tanzania, and we offer a visitation also in the area of the Ngorongoro crater, where there is a group of people that called the Iraqi, or it's one of these guttural kind of like sounds they make. It's called the Iraq people, or Wambulu in Swahili language, and you can spend a day in their village with them and see how they live in a modern world. For instance, they make bricks. They use the soil, or they use the ground that's in the area, and they make bricks, and they burn the bricks, and then they use these bricks for building buildings, houses, schools, or something like that. And you can see how they do that, how they build the oven to burn those bricks. You can cook a meal with a host for a day, and just accompany them on their day-to-day living, go to the market, buy some fresh vegetables, and then make a traditional Swahili or Tanzanian meal with them, and eat the meal with them as well, lunch or dinner, whichever you pick to do. It's an optional activity, not very expensive. It can be done in one day, in between safaris, because we often say only do about 5 days of safari in a row, and then do something else before you go back on safari, just because you have to give your brain a little break from seeing so many animals. So that would be something really cool to integrate in your trip, to break up your safari. So go for 4 days on safari in the Serengeti, for instance, visit a traditional tribe, and then go do some more safari in Tarangire or in Ngorongoro Crater or something like that. So we can integrate it so that it helps to break up your safari, and it gives you something else to see and learn about the cultures and the different people in Tanzania. So I hope you like that, and I really do hope that you will take advantage of that, because I feel like if you go to a country, or if you go to an area, it's always nice to learn a little bit more about the people. We do have cultural visits in other areas as well, and when I talk about those areas, I will tell you how to integrate those visits also. So that is it for our module 4 today. Next week, we will talk about some other jewels of Africa, and that will almost be the end of our series. So next week will be another module. I will talk about Egypt and the Nile cruise. I'll talk more about Namibia, the country in Southern Africa. We'll talk about Victoria Falls, and then we'll talk about South Africa, a little bit of the private game reserves, and then some more about Cape Town, and also the garden route and wine tasting and vineyard experiences around Cape Town. So we'll do that next time. This was pretty much it for today here. Again, let me just get us back to our unshared screen here. So that's me back here today. Hello. I hope you enjoyed this. We're still quite deep in the isolation state. Stay home, stay calm, make the best of it, plan your tours. But I have to tell you that I was on the phone quite a bit lately with some suppliers in Uganda and Tanzania, and we are hoping, honestly, that we may be able to travel again in October, November this year. So if your tour is scheduled for the later months of this year, don't give up yet. I will stay in touch with you on what to do in the next little bit. We will likely, if we need to postpone your trip, we will likely get that going mid to end May, early June, depending when your tour is scheduled. Right now, enjoy some of these modules, enjoy some more information about Africa, enjoy the sunshine. Finally, we have some sunshine here in Alberta. Yay, it's warm outside, wonderful. And next week will be our last module, Jewels of Africa, module number 5. The week after, Saturday after, so in 2 weeks, make a note in your calendar. I will be live on Facebook. I'll give you that information a little bit later, for an hour to answer some of your questions. I will have some questions already prepared. Vaccinations, visas, luggage, those kind of things. I will cover that during the live presentation or during the live meeting. Send me your questions via email, and I will answer them in 2 weeks from today, Saturday in 2 weeks. And if you tune in live and you type your question on the live feed on Facebook, I will answer that day, provided I can get to it. I'm not sure how many people will tune in. So if it's a lot of people, a lot of questions, I may not be able to answer every single question, but I will have the most frequently asked questions, I will have those prepared already. So tune in for some more information. And next week, module 5, Jewels of Africa. And then in 2 weeks, live on Facebook. I'll send you that information, what time that will be, and we'll have an hour, and I'll answer some questions live there as well. So thank you again for your patience. I know my videos are not half an hour. I know, I'm sorry. But I have a lot of information I want to share because I think it's helpful to you, and I think it's going to prepare you for your trip to Africa, and I think it's going to get you excited for your trip to Africa. So tune in next week for the next module, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye bye.